fractional accounting and consulting firm. I lead the fractional CFO and outsource practice for CLA in Dallas, and act as a CFO for a variety of companies in the Dallas area, Common Desk being one of those. For the last 2 or 3 weeks, as you guys can imagine, it's been a busier time for me and others that do this type of work, probably busier than any point in our whole career. And I spent most of my last weekend, helping the majority of my clients with the SBA loan process, and also doing some emergency, budgeting, if you will, to help those businesses get through this crisis for however long it lasts. So what I want to do today, I want to give you kind of an overview of that SBA loan process, what it's for, the purpose of it, how to apply for it, and just some common questions I've been receiving so far. So when you do apply for it, you'll have hopefully some good information out there. I will preface that by saying that, for the most part, the government's been building the airplane in the air, so to speak. And so things that they said about the SBA loan about 2 weeks ago is either no longer true or has been changed. One of those is the website. So if you didn't apply as of a couple of days ago, the website is now down indefinitely to where you're going to have to upload documents as opposed to actually do it online. And so be on the lookout for those changes. But what I'm going to talk about is it's true, I would say at this point in time. But of course, be looking out for future bills that get passed by the government too. After I talk about that, I'll open it up for Q&A and let as many of you as you want ask questions related to your company's accounting and finance, and what should you be thinking about right now, and hopefully I can answer all of them. So with that, if no one has anything else right now, I'll just start talking a little bit about the SBA loan program. So the SBA disaster loan program, it's been around forever. It's not just related to what's going on with the coronavirus. Most of the time you see the disaster used for hurricanes and things like that. But of course, one of the first bills that Congress passed for this to be used related to the coronavirus. A couple of weeks ago, not all states were eligible for this, but now essentially all states and counties have been made eligible. So Dallas and all surrounding DFW counties are part of this. So the SBA disaster loan has a few different components. The one that's most applicable to probably you on the call, and the one we're going to be talking about, is the one designated for economic loss. And that's the one that, as you can imagine, if you have a small business, you either can't operate right now, or if you can operate, your revenue is going to be significantly less. And so the point of the economic loss loan program is to ensure that all small businesses have working capital liquidity during this time, for however long it's going to last. That working capital, depending on who you ask, can have a little bit of subjective definition. But for this purpose, the working capital is meant to pay vendors. It's meant to pay payroll. It's meant to basically keep your status quo operating expenses in play while you weather this crisis. Their thought behind that is that one person's AP is another person's AR, and they want small businesses to be able to pay their bills. So those of you who have AR from other small businesses can collect on that AR. So that's what it is in a nutshell. Now the next part of it is who's eligible for that, and how does that apply for small businesses? The goal of it is supposed to be for businesses that have the ability to pay, but not so much of an ability to pay that they can get loans elsewhere. So let me explain what that means. If you're a small business owner and you have a little bit of debt, whether it's credit card or whether it's a bank loan, and you're currently current on those loans, this economic loss loan program is really meant for you. That's what it's designed for. And for those of you that meet that description, you should be able to get the funding you need from this. However, the SBA loan and the disaster loan program has never been meant for those businesses that are eligible for loans elsewhere. So let me explain what that means. If you, let's say you have $1 million business and it's just you and another partner, and both of your partners have zero debt, and you have a house and other property that you could put up as collateral. The SBA, even through the disaster loan process, is going to challenge you and say that you have ways to access liquidity. You can either access a normal traditional bank mortgage, or you can access a line of credit. And so that's a problem if you have zero debt and you have ways to get traditional bankable debt. That's going to be a little bit of a problem you're going to run into with this SBA loan process, is they're going to deem you as being bankable, and they're going to want you to go through a traditional bank first. Now, if that bank denies you, then you may have another avenue. But just keep that in mind for those of you that are well capitalized and haven't had any debt in the past. You may have some trouble with this loan. But in other cases, if you have other loans and you've been current on those loans, you should be okay in getting funding from a broad point of view. For those of you who have debt and you've had trouble paying those debts and you're currently delinquent, you will have some trouble with this funding as well. Even though the majority of this funding is going to be government guaranteed, they still have the right to deny loans for people who have not been on time with those loans. So going into what advice to have for businesses that are applying for this for the first time, I've worked with a lot of my clients, and a lot of those clients have gone back and forth and trying to determine whether they need it, how much they should get, should they do it now, should they wait. My advice unequivocally is that you need to apply now. Whether you even think you need it, even if you don't think you need it, I would apply for it. The good part with the funding for this is that most of the interest rates are going to be around 3.75% with a term that's up to 30 years. Now, I know a lot of you, if you're like me, part of the bad things about this crisis is that you were operating your business just fine, and now you have to deal with a loan for something that was no fault of yours. Yes, it's a loan, but for a 30-year loan, for a $50,000, $100,000 loan, that is much better than not being able to pay payroll, pay your vendors, and essentially have a significant business problem once this thing ends. So I would strongly encourage you to apply for it. At least get in a process so you can talk with someone at the SBA about how much you need. And also keep in mind that compared to a traditional SBA loan, this is actually paid from the Treasury. This isn't, if you've done an SBA loan before, this isn't the type that you would apply for and then you would have to go through a bank partner to get the funding. This is actually directly paid through the Treasury, and so you'll probably get your money a lot faster than you would traditionally for an SBA loan. In terms of logistics, so what do you need to apply for this? So the website is pretty straightforward. It will give you a basic application that you'll have to put your name, social security number, the EIN of the business, the address for what a business is located, and checking off that you're applying for the economic injury portion of the SBA disaster loan. From there, you'll need, for anyone who's 20% or more ownership in your business, you'll have to produce a financial statement, which is another form that's on this website. And that goes back to my point earlier of if you have other traditional abilities to pay. So if you bring in a lot of cash from the business and you have zero debt, they're probably not going to approve you early on, or at least as easy as they will others. So that personal financial statement is what that's for. After the personal financial statement, you'll have to complete an IRS transcript request. And that is for the SBA to be able to get your tax returns to review and essentially be able to look and see if what your tax return matches what's going on with your personal financial statement and what your corporate business P&L as well. And then another one is your schedule of liabilities. So going back to my point earlier about liabilities, the SBA wants to know your current debt situation and who you owe, how much you owe, how long you've had that debt, and if you're currently delinquent. So there's a lot of forms that a schedule of liabilities will take. Earlier on, for some of my clients that applied a couple of weeks ago, they had a set form they wanted you to fill out. Now they do not have a set form, but they have certain things that they require. So when you go on the site, when you see schedule of liabilities, it will tell you exactly what they need from you in terms of the liabilities. Another supporting documentation they'll have is they'll want to understand your current P&L over the last 12 months, both from a revenue standpoint and from a COGS standpoint. And then my recommendation is, in addition to that form, you also send in a recent P&L and a projected P&L. This will give them information to help determine how much loss you have at this point and what type of impact you're going to see from what's going on right now. The tough thing about that is we don't know, as all of you know, we don't know if that's going to be 2 more weeks, 5 more weeks, or 6 more months. And so what I've been advising people to do is assume the worst, assume 4 to 6 months worth of significant disruption to your business, whether that's loss of all revenue, half of your revenue. One of my clients is an event planner, and so she's assuming no revenue for the next 6 months. And doing that and providing that color to the SBA will give them what they need to make a very quick, hopefully a quick decision on the impact this has to your business. If you're asking, is there a magic answer for how much they're giving? I can't answer that yet because all of my clients that have applied so far are still in the process of being reviewed. But what I have heard from various outlets is that they are approving up to 4 to 6 months worth of gross profit or operating profit, depending on the type of business. And that would be over a 30-year term with a 3.75 interest rate. So another question I get is, can small businesses still apply even if they already have a line of credit that they haven't used yet? I would say yes, but it would not surprise me if the SBA wants you to tap into that line of credit in addition to the loan that they provide. And that's something you can cover with them on the statement of liabilities. Next, some common questions that I get related to this that I want to cover. One is Dallas and Texas covered? I mentioned that earlier. All of Dallas, the DFW counties, and the state is covered under the SBA disaster relief program. If you have businesses in other parts of the country, it really goes back and depends on where you're based. So I assume a lot of you on this call are in the Texas area, and so it would apply to you. But if your home business is in another state, it is almost certain that part of that disaster declaration at this point. But if you have any questions on it, the SBA is able to talk through, to that with you. Another question, just to ensure that you understand, is what can this loan be used for? Can it be used for debt? Can it be used for payroll? Can it be used for accounts payable? The answer is all the above. You're going to get, if they give you $100,000, they're not going to have any type of accountability on what you pay for on that. But it's highly recommended that you use that for payroll and accounts payable. This is certainly not the time to do new construction or anything like that, but the expectation is that it will be used for payroll and accounts payable. Timeline. So the clients I worked with over the past week on this, what is the timeline? They have kind of gone back and forth what their timeline. As you can imagine, they're inundated with requests. Right now, and I actually read this the other day on an interview that the SBA had with the Dallas Business Journal, is right now they're saying in 25 to 30 days, but they're hoping that they're under promising and over delivering, and that they can do that in 2 to 3 weeks. I will say that one of my clients that applied on Saturday is now under review, which is a good thing. However, about a day or two ago, the website crashed, and that's why you're having to upload documents instead of being able to apply directly. So with that, there's really no telling what that process is going to be from here on out. So I will stop there. That is probably a very wide overview of the program, who's eligible, how do you apply, and what the logistics are for it, along with some common questions I receive. But I'm more than happy to take questions on that, or just about any other business questions as a whole, anything about your business that you want to talk about, what's going on right now with COVID-19. Katie, I don't know if you want to let people, if you want to take people off mute and let people ask questions, or if you want it to come through chat, whatever's easiest for you.
I mean, either way, if you guys have questions, hit it on either on the chat or unmute yourself and ask whatever you're more comfortable with. Does anybody have any questions?
Keith, I actually do have a question.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi. So I'm actually a CPA, and so we're kind of going through this process with a few of our clients too. But we've kind of run into trouble with that personal financial statement. So if we have a business that is like wholly owned by another LLC, would that LLC complete the personal financial statements, or would you kind of move up the tiers until you got to the individual who owned the whole group?
Yeah, that's a good question. And one of my clients dealt with that as well. So what we did, and it's still under review, so that's why I don't know. I can't tell you if it's going to work or not. But they were owned by an LLC, and there was two around 40% owners for that LLC. Did the personal financial statements for those two.
Okay, great.
And another client, to be honest, another client struggling with that is they don't want to ask some of their shareholders financial statements, and so they're going to apply without it, and hopefully when it goes to review, they can explain the situation, because that's one of the you bring up a point that's one of the more confusing aspects of it so far. Typically, the SBA loans would require a personal guarantee. There's been some conflicting reports that if the amount is up to around $200,000, they're not going to require a personal guarantee, that the government's actually going to be the guarantor on it. However, I'll be honest, I've read 3 different things from the SBA on it, and it's not quite black and white. So I would apply as soon as possible. If the owners of that LLC are open to providing their financial statements, I would do it. But if you have a client that is a little skittish to ask one of their investors for a personal financial statement, I would just apply and see if you can get through the review, and then see if maybe they'll show a little grace on that side.
Okay, great.
Awesome. Any other questions?
I actually do have one more question.
Sure.
So when we're looking at, I guess, the structure of the company, are they looking for the structure as of the date the disaster occurred, or the end of the last tax year?
So everything I've seen so far, they're looking at it currently. So even for the P&L, for most of my clients, I've been doing the last 12 months since end of February. A lot of that is because some people don't even have their, or we're in the middle of March, so they only have their March financial statement yet. So I've been doing 12 months from February, and I've also been doing the ownership. I've also been doing a cap table as of end of February as well, to determine the ownership. So but like I said, all those people are in review, so I haven't gotten any feedback yet if it needs to be January, if it needs to be through the date the disaster was declared. But I think they're going to be pretty lenient on that.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? It could even be outside of the SBA loan process, even if you just have a concern about your company right now and need to talk through how to think about it. It's a tough crowd.
I'm trying to come up with a question.
Well, in absence of questions, I'll come up with a few of my own. So if you're a small business right now and you don't gonna get an SBA loan or you don't qualify for one, what should you do right now? Really depends on the business. So if you're a restaurant, you have very limited choices right now. If you're someone, a business or a freelancer that can't work because the industries you support just aren't around right now. One thing that I've seen with some businesses is that depending on the level of employees you have, right now the unemployment, that's what the bill that should be passed soon. Unemployment benefits are going to be probably better than they ever have. And so I know for a couple of employers, their employees will actually receive employment benefits that are pretty close to what they had before, or at least as close as they will be. So doing that may be better for your employee at this point. So I would consider that. Any vendors you have, call them and ask for discounts, especially if they're large vendors. So for example, my clients have called Salesforce, Bill.com, all of the typical digital providers as you can think of, and I've gotten really good discounts over the next 3 weeks. So one of my clients that spends about $500 a month with Bill.com got 50% off for the next 3 months. One of my clients that spends about $7,000 or $8,000 a month with Salesforce got a significant discount over the next few months. I would call, beg, kick, scream, all you can to get discounts. If it's a local vendor, you're probably not going to get much there. But for some of these larger companies, some of these large have the cushion to be able to withstand that. And some know that this is also going to be a pretty competitive time for them, especially like a Salesforce when companies are going to be reevaluating options. So I would certainly do that. Rent deferrals. So besides the SBA loan, something I've helped people with too has been rent deferrals. And so a lot of landlords and developers have actually already created forms for you to complete to ask for that rent. That's usually going to require a P&L. It's usually going to require a narrative on what you're doing to increase business in lieu of what's going on with coronavirus. But a few thousand here and there will certainly add up for those of you with small businesses where your revenue is essentially shut down at this point. Any other questions or any other ways I can be helpful? Someone just chatted in a question. Let me read it real quick. So Laura said she's a solo business starting this year. It's affecting the ability to pitch business. What sort of support options would her? That's a really good question. So that's one of the things that unfortunately was not addressed very well in the current bill. But I'm hoping will be addressed in future bills. So if hopefully you'll at least be eligible for the payment that the government's going to be sending to individuals. I will admit this is a bad time to be talking with investors. So one of my clients, they unfortunately turned down a $4 million Series A round about 3 or 4 weeks ago before all this started. So they, as you can imagine, they're now kicking themselves that they didn't finish that. So it is a really terrible time right now. I will say that I have seen investors be more open-minded than I expected. So I have one client progressing with a seed round right now that's still looks like it's still gonna happen once the investors kind of solve their short-term liquidity challenge in the next month. So if you're a solo business, if you're working on your pitch deck, you're getting ready to try to raise money, I wouldn't necessarily give up. I would still go out there because the fundamentals are still positive. I think it's ready, still ripe to be able to get funding. One of my clients is a meal delivery company similar to Blue Apron, and right now they're taking off. They're doing better than they ever have. Been able to get funding. Other ones, business to business type startups, I think will have success as well. If it's a consumer related business, you may some trouble. But I would encourage you to, Laura, to still go for it and still challenge, investors and other individuals for investment. Outside of that, depending on where your business is at, you would still, I think you could still be eligible for an SBA disaster loan if your business has been starting and been actually making revenue at this point. If not, unemployment would probably be my other option, depending on how recently you stopped doing employment. I hope that's helpful. I don't have a great answer for some of that, Laura. Good question. Any others? Katie, is there any other topic you'd like me to cover?
I think you're so concise and comprehensive. It feels, well, Laura said, it seems that the gig economy isn't being addressed well, or am I missing it?
No, unfortunately, you're not missing it, and that's something that I don't have a lot of faith in Congress right now, but over the next week, that is supposed to be something they're addressing as well. Some of the gig-related companies are addressing it themselves, but if you're a freelance, if you're in the freelance gig economy, unfortunately, a statement I know is going to be sent out, but like I told people, $1,200 kind of covers the last week. It's not going to cover the next 3 or 4 months. Well, if I can be helpful in the future, again, the name's Keith Davidson. Always happy to help. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, or if you know Katie, you can reach out to her. She knows how to find me. Or you'll probably, depending on which common desk you're at, you'll probably see me around once things get back to normal.
Cannot wait till we are seeing everybody back around at common desk. It will be
same here.
Wonderful day. Awesome. Well, if you guys are good, thank you so much for your time, Keith. We really, really appreciate it. And I'll definitely make sure to loop anybody back to you if they need anything. And this will be available via a recording as well if anybody needs to go back and get a refresher on some of the information that Keith covered. So wonderful.
Thanks all.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great day.